The morning I saw the caption, I didn't get angry. That surprised even me. I was standing barefoot on the deck of my cabin, a mug of black coffee in one hand, the mist still hanging low over the pines. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at the screen. My cousin Dave had sent me a screenshot. Just one line, posted under a sunlit selfie of Brenda in a low-cut top, clutching a mimosa between fake nails. Divorced at last. He's the one losing everything. I read it 3 times. The phone didn't crack. I didn't throw it. I didn't scream. I just placed it on the railing, next to the mug, and stared out at the lake. Smooth as glass. Quiet as hell. Just the way I like it. She thought I was losing everything. She didn't know she'd already lost me, and lost every inch of leverage that caption was supposed to flex with. You see, most people mistake quiet for weakness. Brenda certainly did. That's how she justified years of digs, passive-aggressive comments, and finally, the betrayal that set this whole thing in motion. She mistook silence for surrender. But I've always believed in patience, in timing, in hitting the gas when the road's wide open, not when you're still swerving through the storm. I picked up the phone again, zoomed in on the picture. Same fake smile, same filtered cheeks, and a little sparkle in the caption text. Celebrating, it seemed, toasting to a victory that had never been real. Her friends were tagged, Michelle, Tanya, some guy named Chad Vibez. I didn't need to click. I knew what kind of guy Chad was. The kind of guy who thinks he won because the woman he's sleeping with just got out of a 30-year marriage with a quiet, boring husband. But Brenda doesn't know what I know. She doesn't know the lake house is in a trust one formed 5 years ago. That the beach property was never in our name. It's owned by a holding company in Wyoming. That the boat was transferred to my nephew Luke after a health scare last year. She doesn't know the business was never joint. She doesn't know her lawyer already misstepped by assuming California law worked in her favor when I had Nevada residency established before the anniversary. And she sure as hell doesn't know I heard that phone call 2 months ago. I remember the exact words. He's so clueless. I just need to hold on until 30 years. After that, I get half. He'll never see it coming. She laughed. Some guy chuckled in the background, deep voice, probably Chad. The clink of wine glasses. And me, standing in the hallway outside the kitchen, hearing my wife of 3 decades say I was nothing but a stepping stone. That was the night I called Carl. Carl and I served together back in '83. He's the kind of guy who kept his mouth shut and his powder dry. Turned into one hell of an estate attorney after we got out. I told him what I overheard. Told him I needed to protect myself, quietly. No war, just a redirection of assets. A reclassification of property, a transfer of ownership, a tightening of fences. He asked me one thing. Are you sure you're done? I said, I'm not angry. I'm finished. But I was angry, just not the kind that makes you scream. The kind that sharpens, that focuses, that runs through the veins like slow-burning diesel. That's the kind of anger that builds legacies. The kind that rewrites the ending. Now, standing on the deck, reading that caption, I realized something. Brenda thought she'd humiliated me. She thought that a selfie meant power. She thought that caption was controlled. But captions fade. Likes disappear. Posts are deleted. Documents, however, last forever. Trust deeds, asset maps, court records. They don't care about your hashtags or your ring light. I opened my messages. Carl had already sent me the update. Brenda's lawyer had filed her official demands. Bold as hell. Equitable split, they wrote, including all marital assets. The cabin, lake house, boat, brokerage accounts, and beach property. They'd attached some spreadsheets, badly formatted. I forwarded it to Carl with 2 words. Let them swing. Then I sipped my coffee. The lake was still calm. The fog started to lift. She thought I was losing everything. She doesn't know I already walked away with all of it, except her. And I don't miss her. I remember the night like a gunshot. It was February, cold, wet, and mean. Brenda had come home late and said she was at a wine and mindset class with Michelle. That alone should have been my first clue. Brenda doesn't mind, and Michelle can't go 5 minutes without checking her ex-husband's new girlfriend's Instagram. She walked in smelling like designer perfume and deceit. Wavy hair still curled at the ends. Full face of makeup like she'd just stepped out of a magazine shoot. Didn't match her excuse. But I said nothing. I was in the hallway fixing the hall light. The wiring was old, and that thing flickered like a haunted house bulb. I just clipped the breaker when I heard her voice, on speakerphone, echoing off the tile. Yeah, he's still clueless. Another few months and it's done. 30 years, baby. I get the house, the beach place, and probably the boat too. He thinks I'm just tired all the time. Poor guy still buys flowers like they mean something. Then a man's voice, cocky, nasal. We are celebrating or what? Are you riding out the storm or just gonna file and run? She laughed. Not a soft laugh. Sharp. Ugly. I want it all first. After that, he can rot in that cabin he loves so much. I didn't move, just stared at the bulb in my hand. I didn't feel the rage right away. I felt cold, focused, like a switch flipped somewhere inside me. I stayed quiet. She walked right past me down the hall 10 minutes later, scrolling on her phone like she hadn't just gutted 30 years of my life in a single call. I kissed her goodnight. She didn't even look up. I called Carl the next morning. Need you to come up to the cabin, I told him. Not as a friend, as my attorney. Carl didn't ask why, just said, on my way. He arrived that weekend, big truck, same Marine Corps decal on the bumper, same no-nonsense attitude he had when we dug fighting holes in Okinawa. We sat on the porch drinking coffee, the same spot where I'd later read that damn Instagram caption. I told him everything, didn't sugarcoat it. He listened, took a breath, then said, you don't want revenge, do you? No, I said. I want insurance. I want her to walk into court thinking she won, and realize she was playing a game I already finished. So we started. First came the irrevocable trusts. Carl had a guy in Arizona handle the setup. 2 properties placed into protective trusts with my son Jonah as partial beneficiary. That way it was for the family, not Brenda. Legally airtight. Next, the LLC restructuring. My business holdings and the beach property, formerly under a joint trust, were pulled apart. I moved my primary residence to Nevada, known for better asset protection laws, and opened a P.O. box to complete the residency paper trail. Carl walked me through each step like we were back in a field op. He called them defensive positions. Every paper signed, every transfer notarized, every filing time stamped and backed by records going back 5 years. Brenda never noticed. Not once. She was too busy buying outfits for her brunches. Too busy texting her new boy toy, Chad. Too busy daydreaming about holding court in some beachside house that technically hadn't been in her name since March of last year. She thought I was watching TV in that cabin all day. What I was really doing was building a fortress. I started going through old receipts, emails, statements, building a file. Every purchase she made on the joint card after that phone call, I documented it. Every Venmo to Michelle. Every gift receipt she tried to hide. I scanned it all and stored it in an encrypted drive labeled insurance. I also left breadcrumbs. Nothing major, just enough to let her feel cocky. I let her think I was still the same quiet, loyal Harold. I fixed the roof, took her car in for service, bought flowers twice that month. She didn't even thank me. I didn't need her to. I was buying time. Jonah came up one weekend and I looped him in. My son's got my backbone and his mother's smile. But unlike her, he doesn't use it to lie. I explained everything. Told him I needed his help securing the family's future, not her fantasy. He didn't hesitate. She always acted like you were just the wallet, he said. I'm glad you're finally protecting yourself. We signed the necessary docs, notarized them at the feed store, where the guy behind the counter used to change Jonah's diapers. Quiet town, but legally binding. Brenda still slept in our bed every night, back turned to me like I was some distant uncle who just overstayed his welcome. She had no clue the walls were already closing in. And I didn't flinch once. Because once a man hears the truth that deep, once you hear the person you built a life with mocking your name while plotting your downfall, you don't get emotional. You get surgical. It was a Sunday. That kind of sickeningly cheerful Sunday she used to call manifestation mornings. Brenda had dragged her group of vultures to some overpriced brunch spot in Pacific Palisades. I wasn't there, of course, but I didn't need to be. Michelle tagged her in a story. I clicked it and it sounded off. For women, oversized sunglasses, bottomless mimosas, laughing way too loud for people who have nothing to say. And there she was, my wife of nearly 3 decades, throwing her head back, grinning like she just won a war. Then came the voiceover. Someone else posted it, one of the less careful ones. I tapped the volume icon and heard Brenda say the line that would become her legacy. I'm getting the beach house, the boat, and enough alimony to start my own line of candles or some crap. I'm not even gonna need a job. Poor Harold still thinks we're working things out. The table roared with laughter. One of them said, "And what about Chad?" Brenda smirked and raised her glass. "Oh, Chad's the real bonus. Younger, motivated, and he knows how to handle things." More laughter. It was like watching someone dance on a grave they didn't know was empty. I closed the app, took a slow sip of my coffee, the one I brewed in the cabin we both used to love before she decided it wasn't Instagrammable enough. I stared at the paperwork spread out on the table, the finalized trust transfers, the LLC ownership records, the notarized letters from Jonah. Everything was done. Her voice still echoed in my head, bragging about all the things she didn't know she couldn't touch. The brunch wasn't just about social clout. It was a broadcast of betrayal. Brenda didn't just leave our marriage quietly. She tried to build a brand on my name, painting herself as the empowered woman escaping a boring man while she sucked champagne on stolen weekends with a boy she couldn't have a serious conversation with. I got the first letter from her lawyer that same day. It was arrogant, full of inflated demands. They wanted half of everything, including things that weren't even real. They said she was entitled to the cabin, the beach property, the investment accounts, the business. The letter ended with, "Our client expects a swift and fair resolution, with the understanding that the court will favor a long-term spouse seeking equitable division." I almost laughed. Swift and fair? Brenda had been playing a long con, and now that she was ready to collect, she assumed I'd just roll over and let her walk off with the gold, like I was some tired old dog who didn't bark anymore. I didn't respond immediately. Carl and I took our time. We reviewed every paragraph, every assumption. We didn't react, we outlined. By Tuesday, we had a 34-page rebuttal drafted and filed. It was cold, clinical, precise. We attached asset ownership records, trust establishment dates, beneficiary assignments, and business structure documents. Everything is legal. Everything is airtight. We didn't just answer their claims, we buried them in paper they couldn't dispute. I didn't go to brunch. I didn't storm in and make a scene like some Lifetime movie chump. I'm not built for drama. I'm built for follow-through. But I did forward a copy of the rebuttal packet to her lawyer, with a note from Carl that said, "Your client's assumptions appear unfounded. Attached is an overview of asset status as of the relevant separation dates." Brenda still had no idea what was coming. She was too busy posting pictures from brunch, captioning them with things like, "New chapter, my rules." She was so confident, so loud, so utterly sure she had me cornered. She didn't realize I'd already walked off the board. She didn't know she was swinging a sword at a ghost. A few days later, Jonah called. He'd seen the posts. He sounded pissed. "Dad, I don't care if she's my mom. That was disgusting." I told him, "Let her talk. Every word makes the truth louder when it hits her." He asked if I was okay. I told him I was better than okay. I wasn't just surviving, I was watching the countdown. Every brunch, every smirk, every dumb caption brought her closer to the moment when the facade would crack, and she'd realize none of it was hers. She thought she was burning the bridge. She never saw the dam behind it. They say the first court appearance sets the tone. Brenda walked in like she owned the place. Heels clicking, hair blown out, wearing some white designer blazer like she was launching a product line. I could hear her laugh before I saw her, that fake light chuckle she always used when she wanted to sound like she wasn't nervous. Chad was there too, sitting in the back like a damn accessory, tapping at his phone, pretending not to care. I sat next to Carl at the respondents' table. Navy suit, polished boots, I didn't need to make a statement. I was the statement. Brenda strutted up like she was walking into a real estate seminar, then caught sight of the thick file on Carl's side of the desk. Her smirk faltered for half a second, just long enough. The judge, a middle-aged woman with glasses and an army pin on her lapel, called us to order. Brenda's attorney, some smug, well-moisturized guy named Vincent Berg, jumped right in, made his case like he'd already won. Your Honor, after 30 years of marriage, our client is entitled to a fair and equal distribution of assets, including but not limited to the couple's cabin, lake property, beach home, their maritime vessel, brokerage accounts, and Mr. Templeton's business assets. She seeks equitable compensation and permanent spousal support. I just sat there, didn't blink. Carl stood next. No theatrics, no throat clearing. Your Honor, my client does not dispute the duration of the marriage. However, we submit that the assets in question are not jointly held, and thus not subject to marital division. He handed over a folder. The judge flipped it open. Carl continued. The cabin was placed in an irrevocable trust 3 years ago, with their adult son Jonah Templeton listed as beneficiary. The beach property is owned by an out-of-state LLC, established prior to the marriage's official dissolution date. The lake house is part of a family trust with records showing non-marital inheritance from Mr. Templeton's late father. The boat was legally transferred to a third party. All documentation has been notarized, time-stamped, and filed accordingly. You could hear the oxygen leave Brenda's lungs. Berg stammered something about intent to deceive, but the judge held up a hand. Mr. Berg, are you contesting the validity of these trust and transfer records? He blinked. I'd like time to review their authenticity. Carl smiled just barely. They've had these documents for over a week, Your Honor. No objections were filed. The judge turned to Brenda. Mrs. Templeton, were you aware of these asset designations? Brenda shifted in her seat, crossed and uncrossed her legs. No, he never told me. Carl leaned in. With all due respect, Your Honor, my client had no legal obligation to inform Mrs. Templeton of these actions, given their non-marital classification and the fact that spousal consent was not required under Nevada's revised trust law. It was like watching a balloon slowly leak air. Brenda's posture collapsed by inches. All the brunch swagger, the Instagram bravado, the mimosas and selfies. It died right there in that courtroom. The judge reviewed the file in silence for a long minute. Then she looked up. Mr. Berg, I suggest you and your client revise your expectations. Based on this evidence, the claim of equal division may not apply to several of the requested assets. Further, if this case proceeds to trial, I will be reviewing all public statements made by either party, including social media content, for relevance and intent. Translation. That little "he's losing everything" caption just became Exhibit A in her downfall. When the hearing adjourned, Brenda rushed out ahead of everyone. Sunglasses back on like that would make her invisible. Chad didn't follow her, just scrolled his phone like a man already looking for the next ride. Carl and I walked out slowly. You see her face? He asked. I saw her eyes, I said. That was the first time she realized she wasn't winning. That night I sat on the porch again, same cabin, same chair. Coffee this time replaced with a glass of good bourbon. The sun went down slowly over the lake, gold fading into slate. I thought about all those nights she spent scheming with her girlfriends. All the private conversations she thought I'd never overhear. All the lies. And now the truth was doing what it always does, cutting cleaner than any blade. She had no claim, no house, no boat, no business stake, and, slowly, no one left in her corner. All that remained was a caption, an echo of a victory that never existed. Brenda always thought silence meant things were fine, that if no one said anything, she still had control. But silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it means collapse. It started with a phone call. One I didn't even know she made until Carl forwarded the email her accountant sent to the court later. She tried logging into the joint investment account and got locked out. Called her guy in a panic. He told her flatly, "You were removed as an authorized party last year, and the account is legally under Templeton Holdings, LLC. There's nothing to access. Her reply, apparently, was to threaten legal action. The accountant forwarded the trust paperwork instead. Brenda had always lived like money was a faucet she could turn on when she wanted. Vacations, spa days, designer bags. And when the faucet didn't run, she'd just blame me. Say I was being controlling or cheap or trying to punish her. She never understood that the faucet wasn't hers in the first place. The next call came from the marina. She'd driven down with Chad to show off her boat, probably picturing herself in some slow-motion montage, hair in the wind, future ex-boyfriend at the wheel. What she got instead was a clipboard. The dockmaster handed her a transfer of ownership notice signed 9 months earlier. The boat was registered to a family friend of mine. She demanded access. They refused. Brenda called the harbor police. They reviewed the documentation and told her to leave. I heard about it 2 days later from the dockmaster himself, who called just to say, "Man, she was loud. Screamed something about you stealing her life." I didn't bother responding. What was there to say? Chad started ghosting her after that. From what Jonah told me, the guy bailed midweek, stopped showing up to her house, unfollowed her socials, even left a couple of group chats. The comments on her posts dried up too. No more fire emojis. No more heart-eyed faces. When you base your status on bragging, silence hits like a sledgehammer. Even Michelle, her closest pit viper, went radio silent. I'm guessing she realized Brenda didn't have access to what she thought. And those brunch alliances? They don't survive when the free rides stop showing up in leased German SUVs. The worst part for her, I imagine, wasn't the money. It was the lack of audience. She built her entire post-divorce persona around the idea that she'd be the one with the glow-up. The one who dumped the old, quiet husband and came out fabulous. But she didn't plan for a quiet strategy. She didn't expect resistance with a legal backbone. And she definitely didn't expect me to move faster than her ring-lighted little parade. I sat in the cabin one morning, reading the latest status update from Carl, an email confirming that 2 more minor accounts had been successfully defended as premarital and protected under my solo business account. I sipped my coffee and looked out at the lake. I'd built this place with my own hands after Dad died. He left me the land, but everything else. Timber, nails, finish, even the damn fireplace. I did myself. Brenda once told me it was too rustic for her taste. Now she couldn't touch a single board of it. I could almost hear her pacing her rental home, checking emails that didn't come, calls that weren't returned, messages left unread. The world doesn't send condolences for failed manipulations. It just moves on. Jonah called me that night. "Dad," he said. "She asked if I'd move in with her temporarily. Says she's overwhelmed. Says you're being heartless." I waited, let the silence do the work. Then I said, "Did she ever ask you how you felt about all this?" "No, not once." "Then she doesn't get to play victim now." He didn't argue. "My son's a good man. He sees clearly now. Took him a while, but the fog's gone. That's the thing about fallout, it doesn't hit all at once. Comes in waves. Missed bills, ghosted flings, cold stares from once enablers, and eventually, the deafening realization that the world doesn't run on intentions or captions. It runs on choices and consequences. Brenda chose betrayal. Now she was living in it, alone. The mediation room smelled like overbrewed coffee and old carpet glue, just like every place where people pretend to be civil while quietly reaching for each other's throats. Brenda sat across from me, flanked by Berg and a paralegal. Her face was tight, polished, and exhausted. She wore the same white blazer from court, though it didn't fit quite the same. Maybe it was the way she slouched, or the fact that nobody was watching now. I didn't come to posture. I came to finish this. Carl slid a folder across the table, clean, labeled, documented down to the date and hour. "This," he said plainly, "is the asset timeline. Every transaction, trust establishment, business adjustment, and property reassignment dating back 5 years. You'll see that each was executed within full legal authority, outside the scope of marital claim." Brenda glanced at it, then turned her eyes to me like I'd betrayed her. That part always amazed me. The way people who gut you expect sympathy once the knife turns back. Her voice cracked first. Just barely. So that's it? You planned this all along? Behind my back. Carl didn't flinch. No, ma'am. Mr. Templeton began restructuring assets after receiving evidence of your intent to file for divorce under false pretenses while concealing a third-party relationship. Translation: you lied, you cheated, and you thought you'd collect a prize at the end. Brenda blinked, visibly rattled. Her lawyer tried to interrupt, but Carl beat him to it. Also included, he continued, is a notarized statement from Jonah Templeton confirming the cabin was transferred into a family trust and assigned to him as part of a legacy plan independent of the current proceedings. Berg scoffed. You're weaponizing the son against the mother? I looked at him for the first time that day. My son isn't a weapon. He's a witness. Brenda's jaw set. Her knuckles whitened on the armrest. You turned him against me. No, I said, keeping my voice low, steady. You did that. You just didn't think he'd ever choose principle over performance. That was when the tears came, not the kind that rolls down cheeks with dignity, but the kind that comes with shame. She pulled a tissue from her purse like it was part of the routine. But the paralegal didn't move. Berg looked uncomfortable. Nobody comforted her, because there was nothing left to comfort me. She tried to walk into this room holding power. She walked out holding paper, most of it proving she had nothing. The mediator, some neutral third party who'd seen this 100 times before, asked Brenda if she wanted to respond to the documentation. She shook her head, slowly. There's nothing left to fight for, she muttered. Carl straightened his notes. Then we'll proceed to the final clause discussions. We left them there, still thumbing through the evidence. Berg was sweating. Brenda was silent. The same silence she used to complain about when I didn't respond to her drama. Funny how she craved noise, until the facts got loud. Out in the hallway, Carl looked at me. She's done, he said. I know. He paused, then added, You're not angry. I was, I said. Now I'm done. It's a different kind of strength when you don't need the win to be loud. You just need it to be final. Brenda always believed in big entrances. She liked walking into rooms like the lighting was already adjusted for her, like people were waiting for her cue. So I wasn't surprised when she showed up at the old house on a bright Saturday afternoon, like she still had a role to play. She parked right out front, the same spot where I used to mow in straight lines, where Jonah learned how to ride his bike. That driveway had held years of our life. Birthdays, fights, holidays, and now silence. But it wasn't her driveway anymore. The couple who lived there now, nice folks from Idaho, mid-50s, recently retired, had bought the place through a trust sale 3 months ago. Brenda must have missed that detail when she was too busy posting filtered pictures of her brunches and pretending she was still in control. According to the neighbor, she knocked twice firm, entitled. When the wife answered, Brenda tried to push past the door. Excuse me, she said, like the house was on loan. I need to get something from upstairs. The woman blinked. I'm sorry, who are you? Brenda looked confused. Angry. I'm Brenda Templeton. This is my house. You're mistaken. No, ma'am, the woman said, calm as ever. We bought this house through a legal trust. My husband and I live here now. The deed's been cleared. Brenda didn't believe her. She shoved a manicured hand into her purse and pulled out her phone like she was going to call someone. The neighbor across the street said she started pacing, talking to herself, snapping a photo of the house like she was going to sue the building for betrayal. Then she called me. I let it ring twice before answering. Her name lit up the screen like a ghost I'd already buried. Hello. There was a pause. Just the faint sound of traffic, maybe her heels on the pavement. Did you sell the house? She asked, voice shaking, breath clipped. Yes. Another pause. Longer. You didn't tell me. I didn't owe you that. But I lived there. My things are. There's nothing of yours left there. You bastard, she hissed. You actually did it. I didn't yell, didn't gloat. I just said, Brenda, not everything locked you out. Some things you walked away from. Then I hung up. That was the last time she called me. I sat back in my cabin chair and stared at the fire pit we'd once built together with reclaimed stone. She hated how it looked, said it was too rugged. I left it exactly as it was. Later that week, the buyer's real estate agent called Carl to let us know Brenda had attempted to contest the sale with the county. The paperwork bounced immediately. The trust that executed the sale was legally binding and already recorded. She had no standing, not even a place to complain from. I pictured her face, standing outside the house she thought she'd own, realizing someone else lived there. Someone who didn't care about her past, her stories, her social clout, or her filtered selfies. The front door stayed closed. That was the part that stuck with me. Not the loss, not the money, not even the humiliation. It was the locked door. Because for Brenda, locked doors had always been someone else's fault. Mine, her parents, her employers, the universe. But now she stood in front of a locked door. She couldn't gaslight, couldn't charm, couldn't sue. She was just a woman on a sidewalk, alone. The final settlement meeting wasn't held in a courtroom. It was in a small conference room downtown, tucked into the 5th floor of a beige office building with faded carpet and vending machines that only half worked. But the room had weight. Carl and I got there early. He arranged the folders, lined up the documents like a sniper adjusting scope. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. This wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about watching the last chip fall into place. Brenda walked in 7 minutes late. No blazer this time. Hair pulled back. No rings, no sunglasses, no entourage. Just her and Berg, who looked like he'd aged a decade since our first meeting. She didn't make eye contact. She sat down like someone who already knew the terms, already read the end of the story, but still hoped the words might change on the page. The mediator gave the formal nod to begin. Carl pushed the final settlement packet forward. As discussed, here's the revised agreement reflecting all court rulings and asset classifications. All requests for spousal support have been withdrawn, and the remaining balance payable is a one-time disbursement from a minor premarital account, paid under the condition of signature today. Brenda flipped through it. Her hands shook just slightly. She knew this was the last hand she'd ever be dealt with my name on it. Then Carl added the final clause. There's one additional condition. Page 6. She turned the page. It was one paragraph. Short, blunt. All existing social media posts referencing Mr. Templeton, including but not limited to statements of derogatory, inflammatory, or defamatory nature, must be deleted within 72 hours of this agreement being signed. Failure to comply forfeits the one-time payment in full. Brenda stared at it for a long time. You've got to be kidding me, she whispered. Nope, Carl said calmly. She looked at me like she might cry, but not for pity, for pride. Because even now, even after all she'd lost, she still thought she could walk out of this looking powerful. You're so obsessed with image, she snapped. You care what people think of you that much? I met her eyes. No, I care what my grandson finds when he Googles our last name. That shut her up. Carl pushed a pen forward. Brenda stared at it like it was made of thorns. Then she picked it up, signed her name, not angrily, not definitely, just resigned. And just like that, the last piece of her performance died. The mediator stamped the agreement. It was done. No parade, no camera, no champagne toast, just ink, silence, and a woman realizing that deleting her own bravado was the price of survival. She stood slowly, collected her purse. You really hated me that much? She asked softly. No, I said, rising. I just finally respected myself enough to stop giving you power. She didn't reply, just walked out the door. The next morning, I checked her Instagram. Her divorced at last post was gone. The comments, the photos, the stories, all of it vanished like it never happened. And still, nobody cared. There were no tributes, no sympathetic DMs, just a quiet feed and a woman left with nothing but the sound of her own echo. Sometimes victory doesn't look like a trophy. Sometimes it looks like a page going blank. I hadn't seen Brenda since the settlement. Not in person, anyway. But I saw her that day. From a distance. She didn't speak, didn't wave. just stood there 20 feet away, looking out of place like a stranger who wandered into the wrong memory. It was Jonah's boy's 5th birthday. A backyard barbecue, just family, a few neighbors, and the smell of charcoal and cut grass in the air. Jonah had asked me to bring something special for the kid, so I spent a few weekends in the shop building a wooden train set. Oak and walnut, hand-sanded, each car engraved with the boy's initials. Nothing fancy, just real. That's what lasts. When I walked into the yard, the boy sprinted up and hugged my leg. Jonah took the box and smiled. He opened it slow, like it was sacred. Then he looked at me and said, "He'll keep this forever." That mattered more than anything I'd built in court. Later, while the kids played and the grill hissed behind us, Jonah slipped me a folded envelope. Trust updates, all signed, all in motion. The cabin, the lake house, and even a little education fund I'd set aside for the grandkids. All passing down the right line now. We didn't make a scene, didn't shake hands, just nodded. Men like us don't need applause. We just need to know the foundation won't crack after we're gone. Then I saw her. Brenda stood outside the fence, just far enough to be unseen if no one looked. She wasn't dressed for a party, just jeans and oversized sweater, hair tied back, no phone in hand, no smile, just watching. I didn't look long, just enough. She wasn't there for drama. She wasn't even there for Jonah, not really. She was just trying to feel something familiar, I guess, trying to glimpse a life that had moved on without her. She hadn't been invited. She didn't need to be told why. The posts were gone, but the damage stayed. And me? I didn't wave, didn't nod, didn't go over and try to make peace. I just watched my grandson pull the little wooden train across the porch, giggling like it was magic. Brenda turned and walked away, quietly. Finally, I finished my lemonade, took a slow breath, and stood up to leave. I had nothing left to prove, no revenge left to taste, no anger left to carry. I just had a legacy to protect, and a name I'd kept clean. Not by shouting, not by swinging, but by doing what men have always done when the storms hit hard. Stand tall, hold the line, and walk forward.